Welcome to the Approach Podcast. I'm Mike Quinlan, and we're dedicated. Actually, I'm going to start over, then I can just delete it all when we're done. So I'm going to start over because I've flipped over stuff here. So we'll try again.
Great. I'll try not to screw it up so we don't have to restart.
That's okay. I'm going to do more than anyone. So
Okay.
welcome to the Approach Podcast, where our goal is to get you playing better golf more often and having fun while doing it. I'm Mike Quinlan, and I have the pleasure of speaking with Jason Tipton today. Jason Tipton is the Director of Instruction at Chenequa Country Club in Heartland, Wisconsin. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Of course. I'm glad you were able to make it. I know this was fairly short notice, but I'm excited to have you kick off my new podcast here. So,
Hey, that's
um,
okay. Like I said, anytime I could be on the mic.
absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that. Um, well, let's jump right into it. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your golfing journey, and how you ended up at Chenequa Country Club.
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, we were not really a golf family growing up. We were pretty much all baseball within my family, but my grandma and grandpa and my uncle were pretty diehard golf fans. Um, so the one thing we got to do every summer was go play golf with my grandparents like once maybe twice a summer. Um, and we always went at like 6 in the morning, and I never really understood why until I got older and was also in the golf business and realized that's just when the course was empty. And my grandpa was a ranger and he got free golf, so he couldn't go
Nice.
at like 10 a.m. He had to go at 6 a.m. when no one else was on the course.
Sure.
But that was always kind of a highlight. So even though we played a lot of baseball, we always kind of liked golf. So I think we, liked being with my grandparents and like my brother and I, and we liked being with my uncle who was a big golfer. So that kind of what drove us towards the game, just kind of, for me later on. And once I, got to high school, um, it started to get more golf focused, a little less baseball focused. I still did both, but I focused way more, on the golf side, I would say. And then once I got done with high school, I wasn't necessarily sure what I was going to do. I wasn't quite good enough to get a scholarship to go play golf somewhere, and to be honest, maybe I could have played in like Division 3 or a lower Division 2 school, maybe. But I had no idea how to really go about it. So I ended up going to the Professional Golfers Career College down in Orlando because I knew that I liked golf a lot. I didn't know really what else to do. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go there. And once I got there, I knew this was kind of my route, and more specifically, kind of teaching was going to be my route because of all the classes that we had. The teaching class interested me way more than anything else. So, and as luck would have it, right, kind of towards the end of my time down in Orlando, um, a guy up here named Jonathan Stewart, who you also know.
Hmm.
Um, he had gone to the school and he was back for an alumni tournament, and he was working at Westmore Country Club up here in Brookfield, and he asked if anyone from the school was looking to come back up north. And I'm from the Chicagoland area, and our administrator said, "Well, we have one kid that he's kind of from that area," and interviewed, and luckily enough got that job at Westmore, and that's kind of what started this whole career in golf. And when I got to Westmore, I was really lucky to work for Vince Bolzano. He encouraged me to keep learning about teaching, and kept encouraging me to get out there and learn from other people. And eventually, I started to give more and more and more lessons. And I knew that was just kind of going to be the route. So every year, my goal was just to kind of keep progressing in my lesson book and keep getting new students and keep retaining students. And by my last year there, I was kind of our lead teacher at the club, and that's right about when Chenequa Country Club opened. And it was an opportunity for me to focus solely on teaching and kind of build a program from the ground up at Chenequa because they had never had a director of instruction there. So when that job came up, I talked to Vince, and he was all for it. And you know, for whatever reason, they hired me, and I'm glad they did. And I've just finished up my fourth year there, so it's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, you spoke about going and seeing some people, learning from other people, and I kind of think of you as the studier of the studiers, if you will. Um, you go and you do travel around and you try to visit other golf pros. Um, Tell me a little bit about the kind of things that you try to gather on those exploratory visits to see other golf professionals and maybe who you have seen in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I try every winter to go and see somebody. So I've been out to New York and New Jersey, where I got to go see Jason Carbone when he was at Baltusrol and Kevin Sprecher at Sleepy Hollow. And I've also been out west to go see Martin Chuck and his right hand man Mike are at the Tour Striker School, and that was awesome. They kind of took me in for 3 days, let me bug them for 3 full days of their golf school, and let me ask a bunch of questions while they were doing it. And, that was also awesome. I'm definitely indebted to those people, and even my mentors here in Wisconsin, I've seen teach, like Molly Braves over at Westmore. I ask you teaching questions all the time. It feels like, so what I try to gather, is just really different ways of thinking about things. So I try not to, you know, form this idea of what I think the golf swing should be or how it should be taught, and then just run with that because I just don't know if it's going to necessarily work for everyone that I'm going to be teaching. And I think that the more people you see do it, the more viewpoints you can see, and the more ways you can figure out how to say the same thing. And I think that's what all those teachers, and that's what really separates some great teachers from really good teachers, is they can diagnose what needs to happen, and then somehow they just explain it or word in some way that the student just kind of gets it. And that's kind of what I've always been trying to seek out from those people. And I also try to seek out some things that are contradictory to what I believe, right? Because if there's some coaches that teach one thing, and I'm sitting here thinking, well, nah, that's not really how that should go. Well, they're very successful in what they do, so obviously it works, right? So I think it depends on the type of person that's in front of you that it might work for. Um, but I think there's always going to be clues in those kind of shadow trips is what I would calling it. That you can really figure out how to kind of gel with your student a little bit better and give them exactly what they need instead of so much trial and error.
Okay. Any of those experiences that you have kind of stand out? Some like is there any like one specific thing from one instructor that just kind of like, I don't know, lit a light bulb for you?
Um, yeah, I mean, when I was at Baltusrol with Jason Carbone, when he was there, just the way he kind of used some like teaching aids to um, just make it very visual for his students, and they could, I mean, within a couple swings, they just kind of got what he was trying to get at because, for whoever he was teaching that day, maybe they're just more visual learners, just by nature, but they were just seeming to get everything he was saying. And I remember there's a tool, I think it's Skills that has it, and it's a thing that goes on your grip, and it kind of teaches you where to put the trail hand on the golf club, and just the way he was using such a simple tool to make a huge change in someone's grip, and they were able to not only do it with that training aid on, but then once he took it off, they kind of went through the same process, and able to do it, started to hit it really well. I mean, it was pretty incredible. I've also never been less confident in my teaching watching Jason Carbone because he was incredible.
Okay. Um, Real quick for those who aren't sure, can you explain the trail hand?
Yeah, so trail hand is for a right-handed golfer, the right hand. So essentially the hand that sits further away from the butt end of the club.
All right. Um, and from those things, do you feel like there's anything like how, tell me a little bit about your philosophy going into a golf lesson and kind of how it's going to go. There's, basically golf instructors are going to look at face and path, and that's going to dictate a lot of what's going to happen to a golf ball. Tell me a little bit
Mhm.
about your philosophy with someone who comes to you, like for the first time, what you're looking for, and kind of what you're going to do a lot of times, like more often than not, where
Yeah,
do you gravitate?
yeah. So this has actually changed a lot, even in the last 3 or 4 years, for me. So, you know, I've done a lot of research and a lot of time learning from Mike Adams and Terry Rawls. If the viewers don't know who those guys are, may have heard of Bioswing Dynamics or the Ultimate Golf Lesson. That's kind of what they're on uh, right now. And the whole, I don't want to say it's a system because it can fit all sorts of different types of people, and you don't really get put necessarily into a single box, but it's kind of a system of um, teaching to where you kind of diagnose the problem and you kind of go from there, just on the coach's side. But their biggest thing is they measure. So instead of me, what I would used to do is, okay, hit some balls. I'm going to see face and path. Okay, well, your path is too far to the left or over the top, right? For a right-handed player, you're slicing it. Let's go fix that. Now I do more of the measuring the person first and seeing what I can work with the person and how that affects the path or the face. So really that seeing the face and path comes secondary to actually measuring the person to see how their body works, how it wants to move. And when I'm looking at some swings, I'll kind of see after I measure, I'll see, what are they doing and what should the body be doing? Is it doing what it's supposed to do, or are they doing something that is kind of contradicting what their body wants to do? And whether that's by just not knowing, or maybe they have heard from a friend that they need to do a certain something in their swing, but it just isn't really for them, right? I get that all the time. Um, but I think that the measuring of the person first has been like kind of the big transition I've made in my last couple of years, and that's really what my whole philosophy is based on.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the measuring of the people and what that entails? Is that like a TPI thing, or is that more along the lines? One time you were talking about like arm length and stuff like that. If you can go a little
Yeah,
deeper into that.
yeah. So there's a few tests, like the trail hand test, which is essentially getting the player to move their arms, back and forth and kind of seeing how the elbow, works as in the backswing. So that's going to give me it's going to really tell what their trail hand grip would be. Another test is, the post test. So when someone turns back, do they pivot more in the center of their pelvis? Do they pivot more around their front hip, or they pivot a little bit more around their back hip? So that's going to tell me if a player is going to be a little more lateral, a little more rotational, or a little more vertical in their swing. Um, which, all that is just essentially, you know, how can we set them up to either, allow that movement to happen. So, for example, someone that maybe pivots more around their trail hip or their right hip for a right-handed golfer, we would expect them to kind of come off the ball a little bit more. So something in setup that we could do for that is just widen out the stance a little bit, maybe flare their right foot open a little bit. So some simple things like that. So those two tests are really important. And then you also have tests, your wingspan to height, which, for me is an indicator of what their posture is going to look like. So if they have kind of short arms, they might be a little more bent forward. Really long arms might have a little more upright posture. Um, and then you have, and this is all kind of coming from Mike Adams' testing, is their upper arm to their forearm. So if the forearm is a little bit longer than the upper arm, it might have a little bit steeper backswing, where if the forearm's a little bit shorter, it might be a little bit flatter. Sometimes people have the same for everything, and they're super symmetrical, and they're just kind of one plane, pretty vanilla, and that's totally great. But a lot of times, like, humans are messy, right? So it's they might have a shorter wingspan, longer upper arm, whatever, right? And you kind of have to allow them to move in that way, even if it doesn't look exactly like it would, in a instruction book.
Okay. So, just for fun, for generalities, if there was one thing that you would say for a golfer, what would be like never seen anybody before, right? What would be like your recommendation for things that they should be looking for or they can do to become better golfers if they choose not to go get a golf lesson from somebody?
Yeah, I think as far as like actual like golf tip, I just feel like if you have the right grip, um, you're gonna take care of so many issues that can happen in the golf swing. So, if it's just one thing with the golf swing, it's hold the club correctly for you. Um, and then if it's one skill that you'd be working on, that would make you a better golfer, it sounds cliche, but just kind of finding the middle of the face and being able to kind of release the club, right? So if we can, so a drill I have a lot of players do is they stand with their feet together and just I get them to get their arms swinging a little bit more than maybe they're used to, and with their feet together, I would expect the ball to kind of hook and go left, and if they can do that without trying to swing, way, left to make the ball go left, which it would usually go right if you do that. But if we can kind of get it to where we're swinging the arms across our body, right, and we're getting the ball to go left, then when you start to add in, a stance and getting the feet apart a little bit, that club face is going to square up a little bit more. But you have to have that first part of being able to swing the arms and release the club that way with the proper grip.
And what would you say people should look for? Like, what's the most common mistake that you see outside of like people hitting high slices? Let's put it more into a conceptual kind of an idea of the biggest mistakes that you see out of golfers for the when you see them for the first time.
Conceptually, I think a thing where like the idea of like using like the big muscles. I think this is kind of the question, right? The idea of using the big muscles to hit the ball. I think it's not a bad idea at all. But I think that comes secondary to being able to use the smaller muscles properly to do it. So I see a lot of people that are trying to, hit the ball and not kind of flip their hands, and then it kind of lose control of the face. So I think the idea is, well, I have to use my big muscle to hit the ball, but you always have to remember that, your hands are the only thing that's actually touching the club, and your arms are attached to the wrists in your hands. So you have to understand how to use that first, and then you can worry about it.
Okay. Um, is there any routines, any practice items that you would recommend to your average golfer that they should be on the like instead of just going out to the driving range and pounding slice after slice? Is there any
Mhm.
routine or practice tip that you would give them that when they go out to the range, something that they could use to help themselves?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I'm big into understanding where the face is. And one of the drills I like to give, I'll actually give you two. One is just kind of a left right center drill. So if you had if you had an alignment stick or a driveway stake, just put it out in front of you, and in order, try to make one go to the right, try to make one go to the left, and then try to hit the stick with the golf ball. So that's teaching you, it's kind of educating your hands on what's happening during the swing so that you can kind of learn what it feels like to kind of square up um, the face a little bit better. And I would say if you're hitting high slice after high slice and the ball's starting right, really work on the left side of that stick. Try to get that face a little more shut because you know how it is when you try to if you're do a little bit of it, it's probably going to
Right.
square up a little bit easier. And then the other drill I would say is, you know, the idea of, kind of getting your arms to swing and that kind of an idea, right? Um, I would just take, 5 to 6 swings continuously. So start from address, backswing, all the way to a finish. Once you get to a finish, straight into another backswing. We don't reset. And what that kind of teaches the student is to kind of unlock some of the body parts that they might be trying to keep in place, and they might try to kind of lock down a little bit, because if you're missing way right or way left and you just can't really figure it out, the natural instinct is to eliminate some motion because like I'm obviously moving
Hmm.
too much, this face is pointing all over the place, so just getting the arms to kind of swing back and through a bunch of times kind of unlocks the rest of the body, which I think is super, super important in the golf swing.
You can come to North Hills Country Club sometime and you'll just watch a whole bunch of people just swinging back and forth nonstop on the driving range.
I
That
love
is like
that.
my go-to all day long. That's
Yeah,
all they do. Just swing back and
yeah,
forth. And when you're done and you're tired, you can't swing anymore, then come and see me. Then we can work on stuff.
that's right. I love it. And it's so funny, right? Because it's such a simple drill, but like if you just spent, you know, a week or whatever on that and you didn't even really hit balls, you just like went home and you did that, like your swing would get better, right? But then you have to add the golf ball, and you have to be able to trust that, this motion is going to create the shot
Hmm.
that I want, and I think that's like the hardest part sometimes is that
So,
is that trust factor.
and I will go and say, this is another thing that I tell my students all the time. If you want to see real gains in your golf swing, eliminate the golf ball. Get rid of the golf ball altogether. Hank Johnson writes really well in one of his books about the three games of golf, right? And that golf ball, it's going to conflict, it creates conflicting goals,
Hmm.
right? And you have this goal of wanting to be better and hit better golf shots on this side. But a lot of times when you make a motor movement change, better golf ball, the better golf shot does not come along right away.
Yeah,
So then you go away from that motor change to try to create a better golf shot, and now you just like undid everything that it was that you were trying to do in the first place.
yeah, 100%. And you hear stories like that all the time. I mean, even like when Butch was working with Tiger and they were making all those swing changes after, what was it, 97? He won the
Mm-hmm.
Masters, right? And then they made a bunch of changes, and they
Yeah,
were, and people were thinking they shouldn't change anything, right? He just won the Masters, he's playing well, and obviously it worked out. He did
you did
okay.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah, not struggling to keep the lights on.
no,
But like Tiger would do the certain drills. I'm sure you've seen the Golf Channel video, and he would like stop at the top and then hit, and it would take months to like feel
mm-hmm.
comfortable with that. And that's a guy that's hitting how many balls a day at the
Right,
top of his game at the highest level of golf, right? So,
right.
so I think part of it is, people need to cut themselves a little slack sometimes. If it doesn't kick in right away, I mean, you're on the right. you're on the right track. Like during the lesson, you should be able to see some progress,
Hmm.
in a lesson, right? And you say, okay, well, if I do it, right, I I see that ball doing what I want to do. The harder part is doing it a lot, right?
Yeah.
So, I think people just feel like, oh, I did it in the lesson, like I should just wake up and just do it again. But unfortunately, like every day, we're not robots. Like our bodies are going to feel different. We're
Yep.
we're going to be stiffer some days, looser the next day, and it's going to take maybe some days an extra 10, 15 minutes to loosen up because for whatever reason, maybe we slept wrong and we're stiff. I don't know. Like
Hmm.
there's a million things, but the idea of like, oh, I should just have it, in a couple of days. I just think that as golfers, like cut some slack. I think golfers are just really hard on themselves, and that deters them from sticking with kind of that process.
Yep. Absolutely. Um, any books? Any books you think a golfer should read? Do you have any favorites?
I like the Little Red Book. I mean, that's not necessarily all like X's and O's, but I think there's a lot of really good
Uh, yeah, I
thoughts
love
in
the Little
there.
Red Book, and I think it's funny that we would both sit here and you're going to talk about the Little Red Book, and if you would ask me what my favorite golf book that I think more people should read, it would be Zen Golf, right?
Yeah,
Neither
yeah,
one of us are going to come out here and say, "Oh, well, you should read this book about how to swing, to do this. You should read the X Factor or whatever it is, right? To try to,
yeah.
right? Like
All
those
like
are
all good
tough.
books, but like some of them just don't necessarily speak exactly to me. Like another one that I really like that's really helped like with my like mental golf is the Be a Player, Vision 54 with
Hmm.
Olympia.
Hmm.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
I have it on on my audiobook, and when I find myself struggling, I'll break that
Yeah.
out and listen to it in the car a couple times. But yeah, you're right. It's not always X's and O's, right?
Right.
It's sometimes it's just how you think of it. It's so important.
Huh. Kind of like the approach, right?
Kind of like the approach.
See what I
Good
did there?
work. Good
Yeah.
work. I love it.
So, all right, we're gonna finish off this podcast, and what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna have a little fun for myself here. Okay? Have you ever seen
Oh,
that guy that there's a meme, right? That guy sits at a table and he's got a big sign that says "Prove me wrong."
yes,
You
of
know what I'm
course.
talking about?
I do.
Okay. So I'm gonna have my moment. I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions here, and this is gonna be my moment for you. Okay?
Perfect.
Um, I don't believe anybody has made more money for golf instruction, like local golf instruction, than YouTube videos and articles in magazines.
Okay. So this is
Like
my turn to prove you
this,
wrong and why they're good.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, so this is gonna be hard because I kind of agree. Uh, but, but, but I will say that there is so much great information on the internet and on YouTube and in the articles and in everything. I, you know, one thing Mike Adams says is, 99% of the information out there is correct. The problem is it doesn't all apply to you.
Absolutely.
So, so it's like, if you come across a YouTube video and it's like it clicks right away and it's like, yeah, this is so easy, then it probably applied to you. But your buddy could watch the same YouTube video and be like, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about, right? So I think it's great information. People just have to be careful with it.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Um, and then the second question that I've got for you. A lot of people are golf instructors now, right? There's golf instructors all over the place, and that's kind of like, I would say right now, the big switch from wanting to be a head golf professional. Everybody wants to be a head or a teacher of some kind, right?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I don't believe in the last, I don't know, 50 years or so, much has changed in golf instruction. Um, and I believe some of the golf instructors who aren't quite as good utilize a lot of technology to validate or even train themselves to make their golfers better. less instruction, more reliance on technology, where that's my take, is that there's less good instruction but better technology.
Man, dang it, Mike. I thought I was gonna have to prove you wrong. Well, okay. So, all right, I have a take on that. So, I think, yeah, I think the quantity of golf instruction has certainly gone up. Um, I think quality is on the way. Because with all these different technologies, the biggest thing now, launch monitors came out and it was just reading the numbers and trying to change numbers, I feel like, and, the ball would do something different. Well, now the next big leap, in technology is more 3D and more kind of force plate type thing. So it's more body, less ball flight. So it kind of goes back to, all right, what's the body doing to produce the ball flight? Not this is the ball flight. What do we have to change? So I think I think even better instruction is coming along as we do more and more research on that end of it. But I also think that we should not discount in any way coaches that have already come and gone, right? So like perfect example, like Jim Flick, who I'm sure many people that are listening to this won't know who that is. He had some drills, when he was with Bob Toski doing all like it was like Golf Digest school, right? That were so good, and it taught people how to square the face up so easily. It made it look a little funky, right? And it didn't have the technology to back it up, right? Like we do now, but so many of those ideas were actually correct. We just couldn't prove that they were correct, except for is the player hitting it better or not, which I would assume that a lot of people that went to Jim Flick hit it really good, like, because he's really good. Guys like Manuel De La Torre, kind of Milwaukee legend, same idea. Like, I don't really hear many people talking about what he was teaching, but what he taught was really good, So
Mm-hmm.
I think as we kind of progress, we might be able to look back and be like, okay, like some of these guys had some really good things, but maybe we just need to add, one or two components to that to really get it to set in and how we explain it to the student in front of us to actually get them to do it, right? That's also, I think, going to improve.
I will say, like, one of my golf lessons that really stuck with me, the kind of thing that, to this day I still think about in my golf game, is anytime the club is parallel to the ground, it's parallel to your target line. And that is straight out of De La Torre's book, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it sticks with you. It's simple to do. It's something I can do very simply on the driving range, right?
Yeah,
I don't need a TrackMan to figure it out. I didn't hook
right.
myself up to gears to try to find out what's going on with this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just super simple, straight out, and you know, it's kept my golf game decent for a
Yeah.
long time. But with that, thank you for sitting through those difficult questions. Those are fun for me, so I wanted to make sure I included some of that stuff.
That's
Um,
some hard hitting journalism right there.
and we do what we can.
Yeah, I love it.
But Jason, thank you very much. How can people find you if people want to come and see Jason Tipton for a golf lesson to get themselves better? How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm at Chenequa Country Club. You can email me at jasontipton@pga.com. I'm also on Skillest under just Jason Tipton and Foundation Golf. Um, I've had a bunch of people kind of reach out to me via Skillest, and that's worked out pretty well. We can do screenings over the phone and all that kind of fun stuff for to see how you move. And I'm also on PGA.coach.
All right. I'll be sure to put all of that information in the show notes for this episode so everybody can reach out to Jason and get themselves better once and for all. Um, anything else you want to leave our audience with?
I think I just want to reiterate that if you are struggling with your golf game, the struggle doesn't last forever, right? And just kind of keep pressing on with what you're working on, whether it's with me, whether it's with Mike, whoever you're working with. Just cut yourself some slack. It doesn't change overnight. And you know what? And the opposite side of that, right? When you're playing your greatest golf and you can't miss a fairway and you can't miss a green, when it inevitably goes to where you can't hit a fairway and you can't hit a green, that's okay too, because the bad times they don't last in golf.
Well, thanks again. Thanks for taking the time, and we will talk again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. That was fun.
Glad you liked it.